Hello interwebs, welcome to Let's Fix Computers. I've got a Toshiba Satellite C55 here that does not post. So we've got power light, we've got charge light. It turns on, nothing on the screen, and I can hear the fan going, and the fan keeps going up to high speed and then calming down again, very periodically. So it sounds to me like it's power cycling. So I'm going to turn it off. And the first thing we're going to do to try and approach this is we're going to check on the RAM and we're going to check on the Cmos battery. So let's flip this guy over and we'll take the battery out. And luckily this is quite an old boy, so we've got access to the back, which makes life a lot easier. If I'm really lucky, I'll be able to get to the Cmos battery or the RTC battery from here as well. Yeah, there it is. Bang in. Right. So firstly, let's just try Cmos battery. So we'll just pop that guy out. And while that's out, let's just check the voltage on it. And our survey says 3.13. That's fine. It's a 3-volt nominal battery. So the battery is not flat. So I'm going to leave that for 2 minutes or so, and we'll just see if it comes good. Right, polite time period has passed. Bam. I shall power it on without the battery in, so that way I can easily power it off by just pulling the plug again. Right, charger in. We have a charge light on the front. Power on. We have a very dim power light and fan noise again. I'll give it some time in case it's RAM training. Sounds like it's doing exactly the same thing with the fan ramping up and then down again. Yeah. Okay. Not the BIOS, or at least not the RTC battery. Let's pop out the memory modules. I'm also going to take out the hard drive at this point. The hard drive will be nothing to do with the fault, or at least almost certainly not. I have seen bad hard drives block post before. Very, very rare though. Not something I would expect to see. However, I'll take the hard drive out just so we're not constantly cycling the hard drive power with customer data on it and stuff. Right, has this got 8 gigs of RAM in it? It does, colour me impressed. Alright, so I'm going to drop both of those out and I'm going to drop in some scrappy memory module that I've got lying around somewhere. There you go, here's a 2 gig module. Lob that in there. So we'll try it in the first slot, then we'll try it in the second. I think it's power cycling. Yeah. Power light is coming on and off. No fan noise though this time. I don't know what to make of that. It's doing something different though, which is the important thing. I don't actually know if this module works. Let's just try moving that to another slot. Power light, and it's off again. Yeah, same thing. Okay. So it doesn't like that memory module. I'm guessing this memory module is crap. Let's just try putting in one of the original ones, and we'll just try that in one slot and then the other. I mean, we're getting a different reaction, which is a start. Just getting the device to do something else is always a good start. Same thing again. Try that one in the other slot. Still with the power cycling. Okay. Let's try the other module on its own. I'm going to do another BIOS reset in a sec, just because I feel like I'm getting punked. Like, I feel like the BIOS is now stuck because we've messed with the memory. Yeah, again, same thing. Alright, so now we're going to reset the BIOS again. Polite time period has expired. What say you now, Toshiba Satellite? Same heckin' thing. Okay. Ooh. I think this is worth a BIOS flash. Yep, still power cycling. Let's take this thing apart. I shall put the memory back in just because it doesn't need to be hanging out the bottom anymore. So we'll put that how it was. And zap these screws out. Ooh. It's one of them old-timey Toshibas where the keyboard comes up from the bottom. A socketed CPU. That's not a great sign. So our BIOS chip is down here. Focus. The giveaway is it's got WinBond written on it. Well, also that it's an 8-pin SOP8 with WinBond written on it. That is going to be our BIOS chip. So that is a 25Q32FVS, if I can read that from here on the screen. So I'm going to take that off the board and I'm going to try and reprogram it. So I will take the CPU cooler off first because if I hit this area with hot air, I'm going to be putting hot air into the cooling system, which isn't ideal. So let's back that guy out and then we can probably hot air this off the board without removing everything. Although actually, no, we're good, we're good. Thermal paste is still good after all these years. Right, now before I actually take this guy off the board, I'm just going to double check that I can actually find a BIOS for it. However, that will require me to get the model number of the board, I think. So I'm actually going to have to take this out after all. Something, the lazy technician does twice as much work. And then puts his finger in the thermal paste. Better in the long run to take the board out anyway. I'm just being lazy. Do we actually have any screws? Yes, we do have a screw holding that down. Check the other side of the board just for good measure. Yeah, other than being dusty, that looks fine to me. Cool. Right, so now on this side we can see all of the board numbers and stuff like that. That's the one I'm after, I reckon. PT10F. Probably it. So there is actually 2 BIOS chips on this motherboard, which is quite common on laptops. there's a main BIOS and and what's known as the EC BIOS. The EC one generally contains the Intel Management Engine stuff and other firmware for the EC chip, also known as the Super IO, stuff like that. A lot of interchangeable terminology. There are correct terms here, not 100% certain which is which. The point is there are 2 BIOS chips on most of these laptop motherboards. I thought that was just generally a HP thing, but apparently it's certainly the case on this one as well. So I had a closer look. So there's the Winbond chip that I pointed out. There's another guy over here, which is also an MXIC chip. So that's probably going to be our other one. I'm going to look up the datasheets for both of those because then we can confirm which one is which, because we're going to find that one of them is bigger than the other. And that helps us to tell which is our main BIOS and which is the EC BIOS. So let's start with the Winbond chip. And as I mentioned earlier on, that's a 25Q32FV. So let's look that up. So that is a 3 volt 32 megabit chip. And so if we convert megabits to megabytes by dividing by 8, it means it's a 4 megabyte file. And as you can see, our main BIOS file that I've got here is 4 megabytes. So that tallies, that is the main BIOS chip. And then the other one is 2 megabytes. So we're probably going to find that that's a 16 megabit chip. So let's check that one out. Just for reference, I've got this from good old Bad Caps. Google search it. There we go. And that guy's an MX25L16, which is going to be 16 megabits. So there's our other chip. I may as well do both since I've got them both. So yeah, let's do them both. So let's get both of these chips off of the board. So as you can see, we've got a highlight in the top left of each chip indicating where pin 1 is. And that is in the, I mean, when you read it with the writing the correct way up, it's actually the lower left of the chip. That's one. And I'll just turn the board. And there's 2. So to reprogram these chips, I'm going to use my RT809F with a SOP8 socket adapter here. Now this adapter can be a little bit sketchy. There are ways to make it a bit more reliable. I need to get a little bit of sandpaper to sand the bottom of the chip really, or sand the bottom of the legs rather, and that would make sure that they get better contact. But the good thing about the RT809F is that it can detect bad pin connections. So it'll usually tell me if there's something wrong. So I'm just going to get that guy in and just give him a little bit of a wiggle just to make sure it's seated nicely. There we go. And in it goes. So this was a 25Q32 FV SOIC8. That's good enough for me. Okay. And let's try and go for a read. That looks very promising. Excellent. Right, we'll take a dump of that. Save. Now I'll open the new one I've got. So it's just sort by name. Tosh. Right, so I can do a verify here, but the verify will probably fail because I think this is an updated BIOS. Yeah, chip verification error. Not surprising, to be honest. It's exactly what I expected, but we'll write it anyway. Let's go. So I've loaded that. Let's go for the write. Bam. Excellent, that one's done. So now we're going to swap the chips out. And we'll put the other fella in there. And that was an MX25L1673E. Stop 8. Bam. Okay. Read, go. Cool. Save it. And open. And once again, I'll verify it just out of interest. No. I verify it because if it came back as verification successful, that tells me that we didn't actually need to program it. However, I'm not actually expecting it to come back because, as I say, I almost certainly have an updated version of the BIOS anyway, so... Or it might be an older version of the BIOS, I'm not actually sure. As long as it's our working BIOS, that's all that matters. Right, that's done. Good. Right, let's get those two back on the board. So I shall just quickly run some solder over these pads just so they don't go horrible and dry. And then we should just be able to hot air straight back down onto them again. Bond. Micronics. Nice. And I'll just touch up those joins again. I found it's very, very worth touching up the joins after you hot air these chips back on the board, just because most of the time you're okay, but I've been punked a couple of times where just the solder joint isn't quite there, and just running over all of them with a soldering iron afterwards just seems to just guarantee that you're good. A loop. Okay, let's see if any of this was worth doing. Okay, everything is connected up. I think we're good to try and power this thing on. What's still on the bench? Yeah, just hard drive and cases. Good. Can we power button from here? We can. We do not need the keyboard connected. Alright. Plugged in the power cable. The power light has come on. Oh, there's a Wi-Fi light. I don't think we've seen a Wi-Fi light. Oh my word! Ha! Look at that. RTC battery is low. No, it's not. It's just saying that because it's been reset. Beautiful. Oh, yes. Happy days. That's it's 6 p.m. on a Friday afternoon as I film this, so that's a good end to the day, that is. Beautiful. Okay, I'm just going to power that off. All right, on account that people will shout at me if I don't, I'll change the battery anyway. Whoop, there we go. New battery fitted. And we can start putting this back together again. So let's put on the bottom case. There's the DVD drive. There it is. So while I put this on, let's just quickly discuss the repair there. So we had a system that was power cycling, and when you're looking at a laptop that does not post, and you've gone through the obvious stuff, you know, you've reset the BIOS, you've checked the memory, that kind of thing. If you have power, you know, if the system turns on, as it did for us, we know it's very unlikely to be a power issue. You know, it's very unlikely that there's a short circuit or anything like that, because if there is any kind of short circuit and one of the power rails isn't coming up, then the laptop would not switch on. It would not reach an SO state because it needs to come up through the lower power states first. And most motherboards will have power good signals. Like if we use a MacBook as an example, now MacBooks obviously have the most signals in them, but the MacBook has a signal called All Sys Power Good. And All Sys Power Good, it requires all the other rails in the laptop to be up before that signal will go high. And if that signal does not go high, the system will not turn on. You will not get fan spin. So there's likely a similar thing in here. So if you're getting fan spin and there's, you know, power lights, you know, and it's trying, you're not going to have a power fault. So at that point, if it's not the memory, then you've got to say, okay, well, if this was a desktop, what would I do? So at that point, it's now reasonable to assume that there's an issue with the BIOS. So we reflash the BIOS using the flashing tools we've got, and hey ho, we have a repair. And truth be told, that's not something I've done very often for laptops. I've done a couple of these, however, I've done it more often on desktop boards. So it makes me very happy to see the methodology that I've practiced on desktop motherboards be compatible with fixing laptops as well. And you'll see the other way around as well. You know, techniques that you can use on a laptop will often work on a desktop. Of course, the only unanswered question was it the main BIOS or the EC BIOS? We could have done them one at a time. I would wager it was the main BIOS, but I'm not an expert. Either way, we had the ability to do both, so it doesn't particularly matter. And we're now booting into Windows, so that's us done. Cut to the cleaning montage. And there we go. This thing actually cleaned up a treat. It was pretty manky, to be honest. However, all that horrible brown gunk just came straight off with the glass cleaner. And then one quick once over with the multi-surface polish has left a nice smooth finish. So, as I say, we'll give this thing a software service. It's not going to be a rocket machine. It's a old socket Pentium, you know. However, it's a completely usable laptop now. So yeah, thank you very much for watching, everyone. As always, my links are in the description down below for my Patreon, Twitter, Discord, and my Instagram. And also, if you like the video, don't forget to hit the like button. It tells YouTube you like these videos and it helps me out. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next time. Bye!